Hello, welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be doing my April wrap up because, okay, if you go back and look at my channel, you'll see I usually don't do monthly wrap ups, normally because I finish about 4 to 5, maybe 6 books a month. I'm not sure what happened this month, but it is currently April 29th, so I do have, I think, 2 more days left of April. But in this moment, I have finished 13 books this month. 13. For me, that is, okay, maybe to other people that's not crazy, but that is insane. I don't know how, when, where, how that happened, why that happened. I don't know how that happened. But if you saw one of my videos in March, I was in a big reading slump. And my idea to get out of this reading slump was to reread some of my old favorite books, and I kind of also talked about that in my comfort read video. They're all starting to overlap, whatever. And that seriously like sped up my getting out of my reading slump. It happened so fast and I was obsessed. I was just thrown back into reading, and it really showed me again how much I love to read and how reading is my favorite hobby in the entire world. And I got to appreciate it again. So let's go over the 13 books that I read in April, and I'll tell you kind of how I felt about them and if I recommend them or not. Let's get some water before I start talking. Alright, so the first book that I read in April of this year was a reread. So I said that I was trying to reread some of my old favorite books to kind of spark my love for reading again, and the first one I did finish was Heartless by Marissa Meyer. And a long time ago, I think I read this in 2023, maybe 24. This was a 5-star read for me. Whenever I picked this book up, I was looking for a very whimsical, fantastical world to just dive straight into. And this is in the world of Alice in Wonderland. So of course, this is so whimsical and fun. And it's exactly what I was looking for at the time. And whenever I reread it, I actually felt the exact same, mainly because I knew what I was getting myself into. So Heartless, it is a story that follows the origin story of the Queen of Hearts. So if you know anything about the Queen of Hearts, she's a very wicked and villainous character in Alice in Wonderland. So naturally, things have to happen to Catherine, which is the Queen of Hearts, that's her name, to make her become the woman that she is later on in the stories. But honestly, I don't know, I think I really enjoy a complicated main character, and Catherine, she's our main character, she is so complicated and complex, but at the beginning of her story she's so wholesome, and all she wants to do is open a bakery with her maid, they're best friends, and all she wants to do is cook for all the people in the land of hearts. She believes that she works very hard, and she believes that she deserves to be able to present her food to everyone because they are very magical and they taste very wonderful. It's just, I really enjoy this book. If you're looking for something that is very whimsical and fantastical and the world is so fun and lyrical to read about, I would recommend Heartless. It does end kind of a way you would expect it to end a little bit. Something at the end is literally so heartbreaking. Every time I read it, I do cry. Just a little bit, because you become very attached to Kath and all of her dreams and her ideas. You really start to root for her, and then certain things happen that change the course of her life. And yeah, I would recommend Heartless. I remember whenever this book was getting more of its hype around that time, kind of resurfacing, I remember a lot of people didn't like it. So if you're in the mood for that exactly, I would say pick it up, but if you're not, don't pick it up. That was exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for something as of kind of similar to kind of like how the world of Cruel Prince is very whimsical and very fairy. I wanted something very whimsical and fantastical, and this was exactly that. So it was a 5-star both times I read it, and I finished it at the very beginning of April. And this is what really helped me get out of my slump. Okay, and the next book was also a reread. I've talked about this in multiple places because I really enjoyed this book. So I'm not going to go into crazy detail, but it was The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This book was also a 5-star, however long ago it was that I read it. It was a 5-star the second time. Honestly, I've talked in multiple places how I'm not really a romance reader, to be honest. I think when I first started reading, I was a romance reader because that's all I saw online. And at the time, I really did enjoy it. It never hit me, and I never really resonated with it a ton. But this was one of the few romance books that I really, 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 really loved. And there was just something so deeply emotional about it for me. I'm not sure what it was. I think the love is so pure in this book. It's so wholesome, and the main character, the male main character in this book really reminds me of my husband for some reason. So I think that was really why I resonated with it so well. This is a magical realism book by Ashley Poston. I think all of her books are magical realism. They're really fun. But this one specifically is about this apartment that travels back in time 7 years exactly. So we follow Clementine, and Clementine recently experienced a loss in her life of her aunt. And her aunt are very, very close. They travel together. Travel is very big and important in their relationship. And her aunt, when she passed away, leaves her the apartment. So this is kind of a tale to Clementine. She's like, obviously the apartment doesn't actually travel back in time. You know, she just told me that when I was a kid. But when she gets in there and she's moving her stuff in, all of a sudden she walks out, walks back in, and there is a random man in there who's supposedly staying there. There's just a lot that goes into this book. Clementine and Ewan is the male main character. They have such a powerful love story that spans over 7 years, and if you're looking for a book with a yearning type of love, I would recommend this book, because you just see how much these two people care about each other, and you watch them learn to love each other as they have grown so much and changed so much in ways that they didn't really expect. So, like I said, I've already read it before. It was a 5-star then, 5-star now. I read this in less than 24 hours, pretty much in one sitting, so it was wonderful. Thank you. Alright, and then I finally started reading books that weren't rereads. So the first book I read for the first time this month was The Rose Bargain by by Sasha Payton Smith. This book was described to me as sort of like a young adult fantasy version of The Selection, or kind of like The Bachelor. And in this world, which is a fae world, this is similar to me, like Heartless. It's a very fantastical fae world. And this is also set in Regency time, 1850 to be exact, in London. So we have all of these girls going out for their season and all of these things. So it's so much fun. I love stories like that. For some reason, like, I just eat that up. And every girl who starts the beginning of their season gets to go to the queen, who grants them one bargain. So the queen is a fae queen. She has been alive for 500 plus years, and she gives these girls a bargain. So a lot of people will do like better hair, better teeth, a better smile, or whatever it is, or maybe to be better at a certain hobby, like be better at playing the piano. And it's really random things that they have to give up. Like one girl, I remember, she, like, her hands will forever be cold. And one girl, like, can never turn left ever again. She's always turning right, so sometimes she'll just, like, be stuck in a circle. It's really funny. But Ivy is our main character, and her sister, a long time ago, had her season and something tragic happened. And she can't talk about what her bargain was. She talks about how she can't really remember what her bargain was. But one day she goes missing, and then a couple weeks later, I think, she shows back up, and she's covered in dirt and mud and blood, and she is forever changed. She's traumatized. And so Ivy wants to go and make her bargain, and she wants to be able to help her sister. And during all of this, the queen has decided that this season will be very different, that she's putting her son, the prince, up for his season, which they don't really have seasons, but all of these girls are going to compete and kind of, you know, spend time with the prince, and he will get to decide who will be his wife, which will be the princess. And so Ivy's decided that she's going to compete in this because there is a big prize at the end, and she has a big plan, and, you know, all these things. This was such a fun book. This was such a fun book. I read it really fast, and I think the second one just came out, I think, this month. And so next time I go to the bookstore to buy a book, I'm going to be picking up the second one. I read it so fast. The writing is so easy, but it's also, it has quite a few beautiful lines, I remember thinking. And I really like our characters. And I don't know, there's just, they're complex characters for them being like young adult characters. There's nothing crazy that goes on in this book that I felt like I had to flip through or whatever. Yeah, I really, really like this book. I will definitely be reading the second book, and I would recommend that you read the first one as well. Okay, the next book I finished was actually an audiobook, so I don't have the physical copy, but it was The Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. I think this book came out last year, I'm pretty sure. I remember hearing lots of mixed reviews about this book. Emily Henry is not really my cup of tea as much anymore. Like I've said, just romances really are not doing it for me. So anything that has the main plot of a romance, I've just steered clear from it. I'm not sure what it is. It's just not hitting for me anymore. And what I connect Emily Henry with is sort of romance. I know she has lots of women's fiction woven into the romance, but it's still, to me, I get bored. I don't know. And this book I heard was different from all her other books. It has a lot of literary fiction themes. So this book follows two authors. They both write biographies of people that are either famous and aren't famous anymore, things like that. And they are trying to write the biography for this woman named Margaret, and her family was very big in the public eye 20, 30, 40 years ago, and they want to write her story, and she has them compete for over a month, I think, so she can decide who she wants to write her story. And yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. Margaret's story is so incredibly interesting, and so for me, I was so hooked into her story, and then it would switch back to our main two characters, and then it'd be like them spending time together, and for me, it just didn't hit in that way. Every time it came back to our two main characters, I was literally like, I know that's crazy maybe to hear, because I was hearing the very opposite. I was hearing that everybody was so bored by Margaret's story that they didn't want to hear about it, but all I wanted to know was how this story ended. So I'm giving it a 3 stars just because I'm kind of in the middle of how I felt about it. Like, I enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy everything about it. So that's kind of how I feel about that book specifically. I don't think I'm gonna read any more Emily Henry books unless one of them sparks my interest, and I had this one from the library as an audiobook, so I was like, why not listen to it? It was an enjoyable read. I enjoy her writing, but I just really wanted more of Margaret's story and less of our main characters. And I know that was kind of the point, was, you know, to split it in half. So, yeah, wasn't really sure how I felt about it. Okay, this next book I read. The physical book is actually in my car, and I don't have my car with me right now. My husband's in it. So I actually have the dust jacket, which looks really funny. But Every Spiral of Fate by Tahira Mafi. This is the 4th book in the This Woven Kingdom series, and this book was incredible. I think it's one of my favorite books that I've read this year. It will 1000% be the same at the end of this year. It was so good. If you're interested in reading This Woven Kingdom, I would literally recommend you to read it just so you can get to the 3rd and the 4th book. They're so incredible. I cannot believe I read this so fast after it came out. I'm so ready for the next book to come out. This was incredible. I could not put it down. I will say, okay, the first 2 books for me, This Woven Kingdom, you're following a girl who is a maid in this house. And from the very beginning, you kind of know that she is not a typical human, if that makes sense. Like, she's very different from everyone else. She's always cold, like always cold, no matter what. She talks about how she has this eternal coldness, and it feels like it's just a pit in her body that will never, ever, ever end, of just feeling cold and ice filled. So we kind of learn, all right, she is a little different, but she's a maid, so what can we do with that? You know what I'm saying? We learn that her parents passed away very tragically when she was very young. So that's why she's not with her family. She's a maid for this other prestigious family, and who are obviously incredibly mean to her, because of course they are. She meets this man in the middle of the night. Turns out he's a prince, Cameron, and Cameron is immediately just like taken with her. Like, he's like, who is this woman? how can she be so kind? And something about Eliza, she's our main character, she is the embodiment of just like a prestigious woman. Like, I just see her like so prim and proper, and she's so kind and she's so loving. Like, there's this time where someone has a knife to her throat about to rob her and kill her if she doesn't give anything up, and she disarms him and then says, meet me at the back of this house, I will give you our leftover bread. Like, she's such a wonderful main character, and she's so loving, and she cares about everyone around her. So I love Eliza, but at the first 2 books, I will say it was hard for me to pay attention just because Tara Mafi's writing in this world is so lyrical and so beautiful, and I think when I was going through the first 2, I wasn't mentally prepared for that, but the 3rd and the 4th, I knew exactly what I was getting myself into. So when you go into these books, please know that her writing isn't very like quick, fast-paced. It's very like tension building, and her writing is just so descriptive and beautiful, and you feel whoever's point of view you're in, you feel like their deepest emotions so well because you're in their inner monologue, and she writes it so well. This book was incredible. Like, the moment I finished it, I looked at my husband and I was like, how am I to go on? Because this book was so freaking good. I'm honestly speechless. I don't know what to say because I don't want to give anything away about this book, but if you're interested in reading this Woven Kingdom, please do so. These books are incredible. It's the longest slow burn of your entire life. Like, we're on the 4th book. But it's so perfect. It's so perfect. I love these books. They are incredible. Like, reading that one makes me want to go reread the other ones so bad, and I think by the end of the year I will have done that. The next book I finished was an ebook version of The Bright Years by, I think, Sarah DeMoff, I'm pretty sure is the author's name. I had very high expectations for this book going into it because I saw so many people rate it 5 stars, 6 stars, like best book I've ever read of the year, things like that. And so I was expecting this to be something that really, really hit for me, and it just wasn't. Personally, I'm not really sure what it was. I think that the writing was wonderful. I think that there's just something that didn't personally hit for me. It could have been right book, wrong time. I think possibly this is a story that spans over many, many, many decades. You start off following this little boy, and he is living a very, very hard home life. His father's very abusive to his mother, and him and his mom leave one day. And that really is traumatic for him because, you know, he never really knows his dad. He just knows his dad is someone who was this terrible person to his mom, and so he really carries that with him. His dad was an alcoholic. Also, there are lots of trigger warnings in this book, so if anything under the sun would ever bother you in that regard, please look them up before you read this book because it is a very heavy book. It deals with lots of heavy topics. Lots of heavy topics. Sometimes it was a tough read, I will say. But you watch him grow up, you watch him fall in love, and you watch cycles repeat, and there's a lot that goes into this book emotionally, so I would recommend you look at the trigger warnings. I'm not really, like I said, I'm just not really sure why it didn't hit for me the way that it did for other people. Maybe I wasn't prepared for a heavy book, so I shouldn't have picked it up at the time that I did, but it was very, very heavy. Talks a lot about like grief that you feel that literally like stints your ability to love other people, and your fears of death, fears of everything around you just magnifying by 1,000. This book was a lot to read, I'm not gonna lie. And I like heavy books. Like, one of my favorite authors is Kristen Hanna. Her books literally beat you up, but I think maybe I just didn't really know what I was getting myself into when I read it. Maybe that was the issue. But it was just like hit after hit after hit after hit. Maybe it just wasn't, I think it was right book, wrong time because it was beautiful. There were lots of lines that I did underline. But For me, it just didn't hit, but I know for a lot of people it does, so I would recommend it if you are prepared for something like that. I would definitely ask you to be prepared and read up on the trigger warnings. And the next book I finished was an audiobook, and if you have been on the internet, you have seen these books everywhere. The Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon. I actually finished the first two back to back. They're very, very short. I think the first one's 3 hours, the second one's like 4 hours. Super duper quick. This story is set in Regency, London. We follow Emma. These are journals that she was keeping at this time. She is so funny. Like, something about Emma is she is such a wonderful main character to follow. She's so funny, and she's a very progressive thinker compared to, you know, a lot of the people around her. She's so friendly and kind, but she's also gonna stick up for herself. And this book starts off with her moving into this house that is technically given by birthright because it's her father's. Her father is allowing this other man, which is Emma's cousin, to stay there for, you know, a couple years until she turns 18. Then she can receive the house and all of the fortunes within it. Her cousin is one of the most unlikable characters that I've probably ever read about. Mainly just because listening to someone that's an unlikable character versus reading about it makes the experience so much more difficult, because it's like this person's actually saying this to you, so it just pisses you off as opposed to reading it. But Emma is a force to be reckoned with. I love her character. I love her character very much. If you're looking for any like quick pace palate cleanser audiobooks, I would 1000% recommend these. I'm not going to give them, I don't think, above a 3 stars, mainly just because they are pure entertainment for me. I don't necessarily think they are groundbreaking for me in any way. I don't really think about them whenever I'm not reading them or listening to them, but when I'm listening to them, I absolutely love them. So I would recommend them for sure. Okay, the next book I finished was as an ebook as well, and that was Remarkably Bright Creatures. So this book I read in a reading vlog, random, but in the reading vlog I kept saying, oh my gosh, whenever I finish it, I'm so excited to watch the movie, I'm so excited to watch the movie. Hey, the movie's not out, by the way. I'm not sure why I thought that it was out. It comes out in May. So I'm very, very excited to watch the movie. I gave it a 4 stars. This was a very interesting and fun read for me personally. I will say we are following an older woman. Her name is Tova. She has just lost her husband, and I think 20 or so years before that, she lost her son. And her son, the town has kind of called it and concluded it as a suicide, but Tova just knows deep in her heart that it was not a suicide, that something else happened to him, and she wants to know what it is, but she doesn't want to look too deep into it because she wants to move on, but she can't move on. You know, the back and forth between moving on and never actually being able to move on with grief. So Tova wants to do something to fill her free time, so she works as a janitor for an aquarium. And in this aquarium we have this little, actually not little, octopus named Marcellus. And a lot of times throughout this book you're actually in Marcellus's point of view, and he's hilarious. He's also extremely smart, and he's putting the pieces together while everyone else outside of this aquarium is not putting the pieces together. He's like, oh, that these people definitely, but they don't understand that they, you know, there's a lot of character development in this book, a lot of self-exploration. Tova has lots of friends that care a lot about her, but, you know, they're kind of the gossipy type, so she's scared to confide about this, you know, and they think it's crazy that she's working, and, you know, there's a lot that goes into it, and I'm very excited. This is going to be a great movie. I'm very, very excited to go watch that. I really enjoyed this book. It was a lot of fun. Sometimes it was a little slow for me, I will say, but whenever I made myself sit down and read, I flew through it. So I'm giving it a 4 stars. I just enjoyed the theme so much, like watching all of these people grow whenever they were very against growing. Like, they didn't want to change anything about themselves, but some things had to change for them to become better people, and I really enjoyed that in this story. Okay, next I finished the 3rd book in the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon. Same as before, these are tons of fun. I think this one was 6 hours, so it was a little bit longer than the first two, but I finished this one super quick nonetheless. The next book I read was The Favorites by Lane Fargo. The Favorites was popular, I think like a year or so ago, and I never picked it up. I think at the time I was mainly reading fantasy. I wasn't really big into my literary fiction like I am now. And I finished that a couple days ago, and I really enjoyed The Favorites. I'm stuck at a 3.75. I think that's very specific, but to me it was at 3.5 and it wasn't quite a 4. I really had a lot of fun reading it. It was so interesting, super fast paced. I was sucked in. But I will say I don't enjoy reckless main characters because I am so not a reckless person that it really gives me a lot of anxiety. And so they were being very reckless, which, you know, makes sense to the story, of course, but it's just a personal thing. And they were a very big spectacle of the media. So lots of people are seeing these two people make these crazy decisions, and it was a lot of drama. It just stressed me out. It gave me a lot of anxiety, so that's why I'm not gonna give it a 4 stars. I did enjoy it. This is a story about these two figure skaters. They're a duo. They start pretty young and then they grow up, but they are very different than a lot of the people around them in the figure skating world. They don't come from money. Our main girl, her father passed away, so she's living with her brother. Her brother is an alcoholic. He's on drugs, and he is extremely mean and verbally abusive to her. And then our male main character, he's the other half of the duo. His name is Heath. He bounced around from foster homes all his life, and then one day he was at the ice skating rink. He was watching this girl, and they started to kind of form a bond, and then her father actually adopted him into their family, and that's how they met. So these characters are very complex. They are thrown into this world full of other people who have been doted on since the moment they were born, and they have lots of money, and so there's a very big distinct gap between these two and everyone else, so they feel that very quickly on. And the world of figure skating is very harsh and tough, and the coaches are very tough, so of course these figure skaters, they're so tough on themselves. So there's just a lot of growth that has to happen for our main characters. I will say this book is kind of like a documentary style book, so we have chapters of just regular storyline, and then in between the chapters it's like kind of like clips of interviews between people that they knew, or it'll talk about the clip that they're going to show, like clip of Heath whenever he's starting to skate and he falls over. Like, it's just like you're reading it like you're watching the documentary, which is really cool. It kind of reminded me of Carrie Soto's Back. I really enjoy that format. I feel like it helps break up the story and kind of keeps you interested in a way. Okay, next I finished the 4th book in the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon. I finished this actually, I think yesterday. This one was 5 hours long, super fun. Not gonna give any details because obviously it's the 4th book, but I will say enjoyed it a ton. I am gonna take a break from these audiobooks just because I don't want to get burnt out from them. So I'm starting another audiobook, not in this series, but I'm very excited to get back to it just because this world is really fun and Emma is such a fun character. And the last book on our April wrap-up, this book I actually finished yesterday, and that is The Correspondent. I have been seeing this book absolutely everywhere, and the only thing I knew about it was that it was a compilation of letters. These are letters written from our main character. Her name is Sybil. She is an older woman, like in her mid-70s. She decided from a very young age that she wanted to write letters to anyone and everyone, and she wanted to keep their responses so that she could leave a legacy for her ancestry, as opposed to, these are her words, as opposed to just leaving a picture and then her family looking at their great-great-grandma and just moving on. And I just really like that idea because her family now for generations can just go look back at these letters that she sent, and you can just see so much of her personality in these letters. Like, she writes to her best friend, she writes to her brother, she writes to her neighbor, she writes to to authors of books that she's just finished, she writes to customer services, she writes to certain dean of colleges and at universities. She just writes to anyone and everyone, and she's a really, really interesting character because for a long time she was a clerk for this big judge in their state. And so she's very, very, very well spoken, and it's very obvious in her letters that she writes so beautifully. And it's just a really heartfelt story. I don't know. It's a really short book. I think it's less than 300 pages, but I really did enjoy it. It took me a second to get through just because it's not like a consecutive story. It's literally just letters, 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 letters. But it's crazy how you can come to know and feel like you know someone just from reading these letters that they've sent. I don't know. I really enjoyed Sybil's character. She was a lot of fun. You learn about her family and her friends, and Sybil has gone through a lot in her life. So she's a very complex character, and I really did enjoy that book. So, alright, those are the 13 books that I have read in the month of April. I am praying that in the next couple months I continue this trend. I don't know what happened this month. I think I've read 20 something books this year, so most of the books that I've read this year have been in this month. I need to continue that because I'm so behind on my reading goal. Like, I think 8 books behind on my reading goal. Hype me up. If any of you have read any of these books that I finished today, please let me know. I would love to talk about them with someone. Thank you so much for watching this video. I truly, truly, from the bottom of my heart, I truly appreciate it. This is such a blessing to be able to get to do something like this as a hobby, something that I enjoy so much, and it's such a creative outlet for me. I'm so thankful that I get to do this as a hobby. Thank you so much for watching this. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, night, morning, whatever it is. Thank you so much. I love you. Bye-bye.